Have you ever wondered if you are truly a good person, or do you feel good simply because you've never been in a situation that forced you to be evil? Imagine yourself as a computer with the latest specifications. You have a strong antivirus, morality, a stable operating system, logic, and useful applications, empathy. However, what if a hacker entered your system, altered your base code, and suddenly you began doing things you never imagined before? Science is often regarded as a light that illuminates the darkness, but sometimes to understand the light, scientists must dive into the deepest shadows. They conduct experiments that not only violate ethics, but also tear apart our beliefs about what humanity actually is. They prove that our consciousness is incredibly fragile and easily manipulated, a kind of glitch in reality that can be triggered with just a bit of social pressure or instructions from authority. Today, we will dissect 10 of the darkest psychology experiments in history that successfully uncovered the secrets of the human brain's firmware. Prepare your logic, let's see how easily our moral system can be cracked. Stanford Prison Experiment. Costume is identity. We begin with the most iconic experiment, the Stanford Prison. In 1971, Philip Zimbardo wanted to know what happens when good people are placed in a bad environment. He divided ordinary students into two groups, prison guards and inmates. Your POV, you're a model student who usually helps stray cats, but as soon as you put on the guard uniform and hold a whistle, an admin instinct suddenly emerges. You begin to enjoy the power to torment your own friends. The result? An experiment intended to run for 2 weeks had to be stopped in 6 days because the situation became too brutal. This proves that our identity relies heavily on the skin or role we wear. Give someone unsupervised power, and their operating system will immediately delete the empathy file to maintain authority. Milgram experiment, blind obedience. Have you ever done something wrong just because your boss told you to? That is the essence of the Milgram experiment. Participants were told to shock another person in the next room if they answered a question incorrectly. Of course, the shocks were fake, but the participants didn't know. Your POV, you hear the person next door screaming in pain, but a man in a white coat, authority, says the experiment must continue. The result was terrifying. 65% of people kept pressing the shock button up to lethal levels just because they were told to. This reveals a massive bug in our consciousness. We tend to surrender our moral responsibility to an admin or someone who appears smarter. We stop thinking and merely become command-executing robots. Little Albert, phobia installation. Now we speak of a damaging software installation. John Watson wanted to prove that fear could be learned. He used an infant named Albert. Initially, Albert liked a cute little white rat, but every time Albert touched the rat, Watson struck a loud gong right behind Albert's ear. After a few repetitions, Albert cried hysterically just at the sight of the white rat. Eventually, he became afraid of all white furry objects, including Santa Claus's beard. Your POV? Imagine your greatest fear now is actually just a copy-paste result of a childhood trauma intentionally installed by someone else. This experiment is deeply dark because Albert's fear was never uninstalled even as he grew up. Monkey drug trials, addiction and despair. In 1969, scientists wanted to study addiction in an incredibly cruel way. They trained macaques to inject themselves with various illegal drugs. Your POV, these monkeys had full access to an instant pleasure button. The result was tragic. Some monkeys plucked their own fur, some broke their own arms, and many died of overdoses. This experiment exposed that the reward system in a primate's brain, including ours, can be easily seized by chemical substances until we're willing to destroy our own hardware just for one more dopamine update. The monster study, breaking the voice. Imagine if the teacher you trusted most constantly told you that your way of speaking was wrong even though you were normal. That is the monster study. Wendell Johnson tried to prove that stuttering wasn't just a physical issue, but a mental one. He took orphans and intentionally insulted their speech, constantly labeling them as stutterers. Many of these children ended up with lifelong speech traumas, even though they didn't stutter initially. They lost the confidence to communicate. This is proof of how powerful data input in the form of words from others is in shaping our own reality. Once a corrupted label is installed, the system will believe it is indeed broken. MK Ultra, CIA brainwashing. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a dark record in CIA history. MK Ultra was a secret project that tried to control the human mind using LSD, hypnosis, and isolation. Your POV? You're a civilian drugged without your knowledge just so the government can see if they can erase your memory or turn you into an unwitting assassin. This experiment shows how obsessive humans are in seeking admin access to someone else's brain. They wanted to hack human consciousness and turn it into a political tool. This is proof that the reality we perceive can be chemically manipulated until we no longer know what is real and what is a script. Blue eyes versus brown eyes, the discrimination filter. Jane Elowit, an elementary school teacher, wanted to teach about racism a day after the death of Martin Luther King. She divided her class based on eye color. The blue eyes were superior, the brown eyes were inferior. Your POV? Your desk mate suddenly becomes arrogant and mean to you just because your eye color is different. In a matter of hours, children who were previously friends began to hate each other. Children deemed smart, blue eyes, saw their performance rise, while the stupid, brown eyes, saw their test scores plummet. This proves that racism and discrimination are filters that are very easily installed in our society, and the impact immediately damages the human performance system. The third wave, fascism in a week. A history teacher named Ron Jones wanted to show how easily a fascist movement could emerge. He created the third wave movement in his class with strict discipline and a special salute. Within a short time, his students began to report on one another if anyone broke the rules. The movement grew so fast that Jones had to stop it before it became an actual riot. Your POV? You feel cool being inside an elite group with strict rules, unaware that you have become part of the regime you hated in history books. This shows that the desire for belonging often overrides our healthy logic. Pit of despair, isolating affection. Harry Harlow wanted to know how important affection is for growth. He placed infant rhesus monkeys in a metal box he called the Pit of Despair. These monkeys were totally isolated without social contact for months. The result? The monkeys went insane, could not socialize, and even refused to eat. Harlow proved that touch and affection are not just add-on features, but they are the core OS for living beings. Without social connection, our consciousness system will experience permanent data corruption. Learned helplessness, installed resignation. Finally, Learned Helplessness by Martin Seligman. He used dogs that were given random electric shocks they could not escape. After a while, even when the cage door was open and they could run, the dogs remained still and accepted the shocks. They had learned to give up. Your POV? Have you ever felt failure so repeatedly that you finally stopped trying, even though a new opportunity was right in front of you? That is a psychological glitch where your brain has disabled the struggle button because it feels everything is futile. This is the darkest experiment because it explains why many people are trapped in cycles of depression and poverty. So what can we conclude from these 10 human system errors? As it turns out, our consciousness is not a sturdy fortress. The reality we live in is a construction heavily influenced by who holds the controls, what environment we occupy, and what narratives are constantly input into our heads. These experiments are indeed dark, but they provide us with one vital insight. Consciousness is a responsibility. We must know how our firmware works so we are not easily hacked by the wrong authorities, radical groups, or destructive addictions. Understanding the darkness is the only way for us to keep the light of our morality burning. Psychology, it turns out, can be far more terrifying than any horror movie because the real monster isn't under the bed, but inside our own brain's operating system. So, from these 10 psychology experiments, which one makes your logic shiver the most? Or do you feel that you have some sort of bug in your brain that was just explained after watching this video? For instance, do you often feel trapped in learned helplessness? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss logically and openly. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend whose moral system might need some maintenance. Thank you for watching until the end. If you like how we explain complex things to make them make more sense, don't forget to follow Synoptic. We will continue to discuss many everyday things that are actually fascinating, as long as they are explained the right way. Synoptic, the world simplified, one thought at a time.